Welcome to the seemingly ordinary world of Jane Keelings, an employee at the local convenience store. Nestled in the heart of a small town, this convenience store is Jane's second home. She knows the aisles like the back of her hand, the hum of the fluorescent lights is her daily symphony, and the regular customers, her extended family. Jane's life is as routine as the ticking of a clock. She opens the store at the crack of dawn, stocks the shelves, sweeps the floors, and rings up purchases with a warm smile. Day in, day out, everything is as predictable as the setting sun. Yet as the shadows lengthen, the store takes on a different persona, as if hiding a secret within its walls. Strange noises echo from the back room, items move of their own accord, and an eerie chill pervades the air. But as we all know, appearances can be deceiving. It started as a day like any other, until a peculiar sound echoed from the back of the store. Jane Keelings, a woman of unflappable composure, was working her usual shift at the local convenience store. It was on this day that the mundane routine of her life took an unexpected turn. Jane was restocking the shelves when she heard it. A strange noise, almost like a faint scratching coming from the back of the store. It was a sound that didn't fit in with the typical symphony of beeping cash registers and murmuring customers. It sounded out of place, almost as if it didn't belong. Her brows furrowed, curiosity piqued. Jane walked towards the source of the sound. It was a soft, persistent noise, not unlike the scurrying of a rat. A rational explanation, she thought, dismissing her initial unease. After all, what else could it be in a convenience store but a mischievous rodent? But as she neared the location, the sound grew eerier, morphing from a harmless scratching to a disconcerting scraping. It was then that a shiver of unease ran down her spine. A rat? The thought suddenly seemed absurd. This sound was too deliberate, too human. Despite the growing discomfort, Jane's practical nature took over. She cautiously peered behind boxes and crates, her heart pounding in her chest. The sound abruptly stopped, leaving behind an unsettling silence. Her search yielded nothing but empty space and dust. No rat, no creature of any sort. Just a cold, vacant corner of the store that suddenly felt much less mundane than it did a few moments ago. A wave of confusion washed over Jane as she stood there, the silence in the back of the store pressing heavily around her. She shook off her unease, convincing herself that it was just her imagination playing tricks on her. She returned to her duties, the strange incident pushed to the back of her mind. After all, what else could she do? Little did Jane know that was just the beginning. As the days wore on, the store became a stage for a series of inexplicable happenings. The once familiar convenience store was now a house of peculiarities. Items fell off shelves without reason, the lights would flicker ominously, and an eerie cold would settle in even on warm days. Doors would swing open and slam shut on their own, sending a shiver down Jane's spine. The cash register would sometimes spring open, spilling coins and notes like a metallic waterfall, even when no one was near. Jane tried to dismiss these occurrences as quirks of an old building, but the chilling whispers that echoed in the store after closing hours were harder to ignore. The whispers were faint, almost indecipherable, yet they carried a tone of desperation that left Jane with a heavy sensation of dread. The fear and confusion wrapped around Jane like a cold, clammy hand, growing tighter each day. She felt watched, followed, and there was a constant feeling of something or someone lurking in her peripheral vision. It was as if the store had come alive with a sinister energy, taunting Jane, pushing her to the edge of her sanity. In her quest for answers, Jane stumbled upon a forgotten piece of the store's history. A man named Joseph Stern had died in the store years ago under mysterious circumstances. The details were murky, but the story was there, buried in the fine print of old newspaper clippings. Joseph Stern, a regular customer, had been found lifeless in the storage room. No cause of death had been determined, and his sudden demise had left behind a shroud of unease. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place. The whispers, the cold, the feeling of being watched, it all pointed to one chilling conclusion. Jane was convinced the store was haunted by the spirit of the deceased, Joseph Stern. Haunted and desperate, Jane knew it was time to seek help. Her nights were sleepless, her days filled with an eerie dread. The strange happenings at the convenience store were escalating, and she was convinced that the spirit of Joseph Stern was behind it all. In her plight, Jane turned to the one person she believed could help, an exorcist. She found him in the yellow pages, under a section she'd never thought she would need to peruse. The exorcist was a man of indeterminate age, with a weathered face that spoke of years spent battling the supernatural. His name was Father Thomas, and he agreed to come at once. Upon his arrival, Father Thomas immediately sensed something amiss. The convenience store, an ordinary establishment by day, seemed to harbor a spectral presence. He walked the aisles, his fingers brushing over the stocked shelves, his eyes scanning the corners steeped in shadow. There was a chill in the air, a certain heaviness that clung to the place. Father Thomas listened attentively as Jane recounted the unnerving events that had been occurring. The strange noises, the objects moving on their own, the chilling sense of being watched. He nodded, his face grave, understanding the distress that Jane was under. After a thorough investigation, Father Thomas confirmed Jane's fears. "There's definitely a presence here," he said. "But fear not, we'll do everything we can to rid this place of it." The plan was straightforward yet daunting. They would conduct an exorcism, a ritual to banish the restless spirit of Joseph Stern from the convenience store. Father Thomas would lead the ritual, reciting ancient prayers and incantations, while Jane would assist, her presence providing a familiar anchor for the spirit. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows across the convenience store, Jane and Father Thomas braced themselves. They were about to face the unknown, to confront a spirit that had been causing turmoil and fear. With a plan in place, Jane and the exorcist prepared for the confrontation of their lives. The night of the exorcism had arrived, and with it, a palpable tension. Jane Keelings, the unsuspecting convenience store worker, found herself standing shoulder to shoulder with an exorcist, a role she never envisioned for herself. Yet, there was a certain resolve in her eyes, a determination to reclaim the peace that had been stolen from her daily life. The exorcist began the ritual, his voice steady as he chanted ancient incantations. The air in the room grew heavy, as if a storm was brewing within the confines of the store. The shelves shivered and the overhead lights flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced and twisted in the dim glow. Jane could feel the spirit's presence, a cold, unseen force that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. Joseph Stern, the man who had met his untimely end in this very store, was resisting, fighting back against the exorcism with a strength that belied his spectral form. The air grew colder, the tension thickening like quicksand. Yet Jane and the exorcist held their ground, their voices intertwining in a chorus of defiance. The exorcist, with his years of experience, matched the spirit's resistance with a relentless determination. Jane, fueled by her longing for normalcy, added her own strength to the struggle. Their combined effort created a force field of willpower, pushing back against the spirit's attempts to maintain its haunting. The battle of wills raged on, the store becoming the stage for an otherworldly tug-of-war. The spirit wailed, a sound that sent chills down the spine, a chilling testament to his anguish and resistance. However, as the exorcism reached its crescendo, the wailing began to fade, the spirit's resistance waning, and then silence. The tension that had hung heavy in the air dissipated, replaced by a calmness that felt almost alien after the intense struggle. The overhead lights stopped flickering, casting a steady glow over the store once more. With a final chilling cry, the spirit of Joseph Stern was finally at peace. In the quiet that followed, Jane could finally breathe a sigh of relief. The spectre of Joseph Stern had been laid to rest. His ethereal presence, which had once filled every corner of the convenience store with dread, was no more. The air, once heavy with unease, now seemed lighter, purged of the lingering ghostly energies. The convenience store, her workplace, her livelihood, had returned to its former state of normalcy. Yet the echoes of the haunting lingered in Jane's mind. The experience had irrevocably altered her perspective, coloring her world with hues of the supernatural she had never imagined. She found herself more attuned to the whispers of the unseen, more aware of the mysteries that lay beyond the veil of the ordinary. Life at the convenience store returned to its familiar rhythm, but Jane Keelings would never forget the time her ordinary life turned into an extraordinary tale.